Oh, hello. Welcome to today's Decay, where we celebrate births and beginnings of everything important since the dawn of time. Today is January 10th, and we're going to take a moment to reflect on all sorts of artists, writers, musicians, movies, you name it, all sorts of things that have triumphed over adversity, actually managed to finish what they were working on and release it, or not, and still do exciting, inspirational stuff, because otherwise days just meld together and the world is not a place to expect it to be positive on its own, right? Yeah, so let's remake it in our own image on a day-to-day basis. Today, 1897, possibly Sam Chapman was born, who was a very early Delta blues, folk blues musician. Don Monteverde was born on this day. Monte was a lowbrow artist who, I guess you could say, anticipated the success of like Big Daddy Roth, although he was doing very similar work just before Big Daddy Roth. What I'm saying is like stuff like this here. So, this is all like lowbrow great artwork that arguably Ratfink and all that came out afterwards, and he was very inspired by him. Yeah, so his legacy's kind of been eclipsed, I guess, because he's not as pop culture of a name or an icon, but I would suggest taking a look at trying to find this book, because it's super cool. It's got lots of great artwork in it, and it's a story that is not well known. Also, a story that's really well known is Metropolis, When Worlds Collide, directed by Fritz Lang, starring Brigitte Helm. Story by Thea von Harbrow. This film premiered in Berlin in 1927 on this day. Interesting story here is that the movie premiered in Berlin, 27. Let's say the runtime, I'm just going to throw out a number, was 2 hours and 27 minutes or something like that. When it hit outside of Berlin, the rest of Germany, it was cut down to 2 hours straight. Outside of Europe, it was like an hour and 45 minutes. In Europe, hour and 45 minutes. In the rest of the world, eventually, they keep cutting it down to like, eventually the version that people may have grown up with in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, was like an hour and 5 minutes or something like that, like its runtime. So it was so drastically cut down, because basically if you could show more movies in a day, or more screenings of a film in a day, you could make more money, because you could have more people paying. But to do so, because this is a silent film, they had to like drastically change the intertitles to like have it still make sense, even though they've cut out like 2/3 of the film. And that's the way it was in like public domain form for several decades. And then in about the year 2000-ish, some movie distribution company, I'm not sure who found it. Somebody found it in like South America, I think like Brazil maybe, found a nearly complete, like the European or maybe the Berlin, or rather the German version of it, with like notes for what was missing. And then a subsequent one was found that had even more information in there, and so they pieced it all back together again. And so like what you never realized was almost a lost movie actually was, and has since been found and put back together again. And so there's whole like story arcs and character drives and like backstories that happen before the like narrative of the film happens, that were not in any versions of this that you would have seen in like a public domain VHS of this in 1980 something. Like, that's wonderful. Who would have thought these things were still available or could be sitting in a box somewhere? It was. Here is a original 1927 piece of sheet music for Metropolis, City of Dreams, the UFA masterpiece Metropolis. This stuff was silent, but very often like had intended scores that people could play along with it. Here's a original 1927, April 16th, 1927 newspaper advertisement for Metropolis, mixed in with some, can you see up there? A little bit, not totally. Yeah. That's some more Metropolis 1927 press stuff. More here, more there, more everywhere. Here is a UK version of the photoplay with a repro dust jacket, also 27. Yeah. One thing to keep in mind, as written by Thea von Harbrow here, this novel, her screenplay / novel was written in 25-ish, I think, something like that. The film's 27. The novel maybe was written in 25. Claude Freret, French, the running problem here, wrote this book, Useless Hands, in French in 1920, which was then translated into English 1923. Certainly this is something she would have been familiar with. It is the exact same story. And for those of you that don't know, as the Nazis rose to power, Hitler loved the girl on the moon, or the woman on the moon, loved Metropolis, offered Fritz Lang like the head propaganda role in the Nazi regime as he was coming to power. Fritz Lang said, "Thanks so much for the offer, let me think about it." Went home, packed his bags, left in the middle of the night, left his wife, Thea von Harbrow, the writer of Metropolis, in Germany because she was a Nazi supporter. He went to England and then America. She stayed there and I believe worked with him. So what's my point here? Not only was she a Nazi, but also a plagiarist, because this is like the same story, although even written much better. So for those of you that haven't heard of Useless Hands, pick it up because it's great. Yeah. What else? On this day, 1941, here in New York City, Boris Karloff and Josephine Hull, that's Henry Hull's wife? Cortlandt Hull's aunt, a relative to Cortlandt Hull anyway, premiered at the Fulton Theater on Broadway, doing a version, or like I think it's the premiere of Arsenic and Old Lace, which I would have loved to have seen. I mean, really any Karloff on Broadway. Like he played Captain Hook and Peter Pan on Broadway. That's one of my bucket list things of, if given a chance, I'd love to have seen that. Yeah. Anyway, right. So this day, 1941, just down the road a piece on Broadway, Karloff stomped the stage. 1944, Jeffrey Catherine Jones was born, a phenomenal illustrator, painter who did lots of fantasy, sword and sandal type stuff, science fiction. Will transport you to other worlds or double your money back. So there you go, January 10th, all day. Today's Decay. Till tomorrow.